There is something about spring which makes me fall in love with reading all over again. I find I have a regular reading pattern where I read so much in January, read a little in February and March, and then find my passion reignited as we near April. I think it's how inspired I feel by the sunshine after the long, wet winter days, and the creativity ignited by the changing world around me after such a stagnant landscape through winter. Or maybe it's just the heartwarming feel of a period romance novel like Pride and Prejudice, or the coziness of a cottagey classic like Wind in the Willows. But reading seems to take on a newfound loveliness in the springtime. Light and heartwarming, cozy and reassuring, I find myself drawn to books full of hope, romance and whimsy in this season. So in today's video, I want to share my reading goals and spring to be read list, and talk about what reading will look like for me this spring. Go and grab yourself a heartwarming warm drink, get cozy, and I hope that you enjoy this video. I recently asked for spring book recommendations as I was really in the mood to read a really spring book, a book that really captured the essence of spring. And I received a lot of recommendations by the same author, which I'm so excited to talk about because it has led to something else, which I'm going to mention more in a little bit in this video. I was hoping that I would have found a copy of this book secondhand in the bookshop that I found, as it's quite a popular book to find in a secondhand bookshop. However, there wasn't any copies of any books by this author, so I decided to order the book online. It's a book I already have copies of, but because I wanted to annotate this book, I wanted to get a copy that wasn't super expensive or really beautiful in that sense, and also that had pages that were thick enough to annotate nicely on. I decided to sit down and catch up on my reading journal. I've been trying to be a bit more intentional about writing my thoughts on the books that I read this year, and I've been trying to document them as I go in this reading journal. But of course I have gotten a little bit behind, because as soon as I finish a book, the first thing that I want to do is pick up another book. And so I find that I have to slow myself down every 2 or 3 books and focus on trying to remember what I felt about those books and writing it down. I love the idea that in years to come I could reread one of these books and be able to remember how I felt about it before and compare it. Something about writing down my thoughts on what I read really solidifies in my mind how I felt about a book, and that's one of the reasons why I really want to get into annotating books more this year. With reading a little bit less at the moment after having a baby and not having that same amount of time to read, I've been finding that I've been enjoying reading at a slower pace and really actually reading what I read. And I think that annotating really helps with that as well. It's so easy to read and then completely forget a book after I've moved on to the next one, and I really don't want to get into the habit of that, particularly when it comes to classics or books that have a really important message or theme that I really want to remember. I also feel like spring is the time for new beginnings and trying new things, so I feel like this is the perfect time to try annotating for the first time. I am fueling myself with caffeine today because I made the very silly decision to pick reading over sleeping last night. Ivy has started sleeping like 4 or 5 hours in a block at the beginning of the night, and I'm still in disbelief. About 9 o'clock last night, she fell asleep and I decided to just sit in bed, pick up a book, read for a little bit, because normally she'll sleep for like half an hour, wake up again, and this goes on for a while until late in the night. But she's actually started properly sleeping at that time now for about 4 to 5 hours, and I was reading until about midnight, until I realised that I'd been reading for like 3 hours and she had been asleep for about 3 hours, and I had just completely missed my good sleep window for the night. The book that I'm currently reading, I don't have the actual book, I don't know where it is, somewhere in the house, but I have the dust jacket. I'm currently reading Emily Wilde's Map of the Other Lands by Heather Fawcett, which is the sequel to Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I got to about the 200-ish page mark last night and I'm really enjoying this. I'm not enjoying it as much as the first book. I'll share more of my thoughts when I do my reading wrap up, but I'm loving the characters and I'm loving the kind of relationships and the dialogue, but I'm not enjoying the story as much as the first one. It's still nice escapism though, and I feel like it's the perfect kind of bedtime book because the way that Heather Fawcett describes this world, I can really picture it so vividly in my mind, and it just feels like reading a children's book even though it's not a children's book. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this. That's what I'm currently reading and what made me not get my sleep last night. I thought I'd share with you my spring TBR, the books I want to read throughout the season of spring. I have shared previously in other videos about how my reading has really changed since having a baby, and I am definitely not able to read the amounts of books that I was reading before. But I've also found with that I've kind of discovered a new way of reading, in that I feel like I'm reading things slower. I've always been quite a fast reader, and to give you an example, I was listening to a book on audiobook. I would normally listen to an audiobook on at least like 2 times speed because my brain does work at that pace, but I actually listened to this audiobook on normal speed. I think I maybe increased it to like 1.2 or 1.3 times speed, but pretty much I listened to it at the speed it was being told. And I really enjoyed that so much more than I've enjoyed listening to an audiobook before. And I think it's because I actually just slowed down and allowed myself to enjoy the story. Basically, I've just been enjoying reading less, but really reading what I read, if that makes sense. So I have 4 or 5 books that I want to get to throughout spring. I'm sure I will add to this list, but these are the ones that are on my list at the moment. The first book that I really want to get to this spring is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This leads me on to a very exciting announcement. In April, I am going to be hosting a Jane Austen readathon. So this will be a readathon throughout the whole month of April where you guys can get involved and we can join together to read a Jane Austen novel. The way it will work is that everyone can pick a different Jane Austen novel, whichever Jane Austen novel you want to read. It could be a reread of a favourite or reading one for the first time. We can all be reading different Jane Austen books, and the goal is just to read that book throughout the month of April. There will be no key points that you need to get through the book by certain weeks or anything like that. It's going to be really low key. It's just a way for us to encourage each other to read a book throughout the month, and have the joy of connecting with a community of readers and sharing our love for books together. I've set up a chat on Discord, so that's where we're going to kind of have our discussions, and it will be open throughout the whole month, so people can log in and chat about books throughout. And there will also be set times throughout the month where I will log in, and we can all aim to try and log in for that hour and have a specific discussion about a topic. So might be about our favourite character, or our favourite quote so far, or the romantic plot line. So that will be the non-spoilery chat. And then I'm also setting up specific spoilery book chats. So for example, if you're reading Pride and Prejudice and you want to talk to someone about a very specific thing in the book, you can go onto the Pride and Prejudice chat and talk about it, full of spoilers. So if you are interested in joining this readathon, all you need to do is email readerinareverie@gmail.com. So email me and let me know your name and the Jane Austen novel that you want to read throughout the month of April. I will then add you to the Discord chat, and from the 1st of April, the chat will be open and we can start chatting to each other. How many times can I say chat in one sentence? I really hope that you will join me. I just think it'll be so much fun to have our own little Jane Austen book club in April. Hopefully some of you guys will come along and join me for the month. The next book that I really want to get to in the spring is a book that was on my TBR last year and I just never got around to reading it. And that is The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery. L.M. Montgomery is of course the author of the Anne of Green Gables series, and I absolutely adore that series. I think I'm 4 books in, so I might also try and carry on with the Anne of Green Gables series this spring as well. But I particularly want to read this book. It is an adult novel, I believe, and it's a standalone. One of the quotes on the back of the novel says, "The sweetest romance I've ever read, full of laugh out loud moments and obnoxious villains, on par with Jane Austen's best." I really don't know that much about the book, but I kind of want to go into it that way and just enjoy it completely fresh. So I'm hoping to get to this book throughout spring. Another book that I really want to read is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I talked about this last week in my book haul, but I'm just really in the mood for some light-hearted, romantic, easygoing reads, and I feel like this will be a really good one. I know that so many people really love this Emily Henry book. It's about a publicist and an author, I believe. No, it's not. It's about a literary agent and an editor, so kind of similar. And there's a kind of rivals to lovers romance plotline, which I absolutely love. I am very excited to read this book and see what I think. I've only read one other Emily Henry book and I thought it was good but not amazing, but I've heard amazing things about this one, so I have high hopes for it. Another book that's kind of on my radar this spring is a book that I randomly picked up in a charity shop a couple of months ago, and that is Mr. Golightly's Holiday by Sally Vickers. The description of this book very much reminds me of The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. It has a similar sounding plot line of a man who is taking a holiday, goes on a journey and has to kind of re-examine his attitudes in a new and changing world. I think any book with a kind of journey or holiday or trip to me feels very apt for spring. I think because it's the season where you get out of your house and go on adventures again after the long winter, and so I'm really excited to read this. I literally know nothing about it. I've never heard anyone talk about it. I've not read any reviews of it really, other than when I was in the shop and I quickly searched it on Goodreads, but I really don't know much about it. It sounds like a kind of story that I would enjoy, so I want to pick up this book as well throughout spring. And then if I'm doing really well with my reading and I managed to get through all of those plus my current read throughout spring, I would also like to re-pick up Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier. I have owned this book for probably about 10 years and I've tried to read it once before. I think I probably got a couple of hundred pages through, but it is a 600-page novel. and I don't remember why I put it down. I think I probably had something else that I had to read, and then because this is quite a heavy and intricate fantasy, I felt like I had to restart this book, and then I just never did. From what I remember, it's set in Ireland, kind of ancient Ireland, and I think there's a raid on this girl's family's home and she is kidnapped, and there's a kind of romance that blooms between her and one of the captors, I believe. I just know that so many people love this book, and I really feel like I should give it another go this spring. So those are all of the books that I want to read this spring. I would love to know which books you want to read this season, what's on the top of your TBR. Also let me know your spring book recommendations. I am always up for more spring book recommendations. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you have a wonderful beginning of spring and a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you very soon with another video.